Now, most of you are familiar with beer labels or beverage labels. Labels are very, very common, but there's another way to label a can, and that's the shrink sleeve. Today, I've got 6 different beverage shrink sleeves. I'm gonna walk through each one, show you how they were made, what's going on with them, show you what makes them cool, and give you my opinion. Let's go. Hello everybody, my name is Dave. I'm the founder of Print Design Academy, where we are teaching graphic designers to be experts in print and packaging design. Now, one of the best ways to become an expert is to fully understand how some of this great print and packaging stuff is made. So you take great stuff that's already out there in the market, reverse engineer it, tear it down, just understand what went into it to create that. That way you can implement those features, those specialty finishes, whatever it is, in future print and packaging projects that you are working on. Today, I've got 6 shrink sleeves in front of me. Now, this is kind of like the alternative to the label. There's no adhesive here. It's just shrunk with heat. Just another way to label a bottle, a can, a product of some kind. But there's some unique things about shrink sleeves that make them a little bit different than beer labels. So first, let me explain that shrink sleeves are clear. Right, with a label, you got a white back label, a silver back label, whatever it is. Shrink sleeves are clear. They are clear plastic, right? So keep that in mind as we're going through these, because it'll be relevant, I promise. So another thing to know about shrink sleeve is that you print on the inside of a shrink sleeve. You kind of print reverse. Because it's clear, you can see that artwork through the shrink material, right? With a label, you're printing directly on the label surface, and that's what you're facing, that's what's facing out, that's what you're touching, all that kind of stuff. Shrink sleeve, you're printing on the inside of the shrink, and you're seeing that artwork through it. So in that case, you don't need any laminates or varnishes for protection. When you start getting into laminates and stuff for shrink, it's to create these cool visual effects, much like this first one here. Prime hydration drink. Now, if you haven't seen this one around, it's like $8 a bottle. It's ridiculous. But anyways, I picked this sample because of the colors, because it shows off shrink sleeves and the contours, because a lot of people associate shrink sleeves with cans, but shrink sleeve can also be used on bottles. I've seen it on wine bottles. I've seen it on food products, because you can integrate a little tamper seal in the top sometimes. So shrink can also be used on bottles and other products. This one I grabbed because it's got a nice deep blue Pantone that looks really great. I checked it with a little loop, I got right in there and made sure it's a Pantone for sure. And then you've got the black. This is a 2-color print, again, on the inside of the shrink sleeve. It's got kind of this soft touch feel to it. So it's got a really nice matte varnish on the outside of it. Probably a soft touch varnish, honestly, because it feels really silky smooth. And then what you have is this black prime big logo down the front here left as gloss. So what they've done is they've printed the blue and the black on the inside of the shrink sleeve. Then they printed a soft touch coating on the outside in a spot treatment, leaving this prime as just straight shrink, keeping it glossy. Boom. That's how this one was done. So now a couple of things about the file prep in something like this. You would do your design as usual. You don't need to mirror anything. You don't need to reverse anything. That's done on the printer side, right? So that goes for all of the ones that I'm going to talk about. Just design your artwork just like you would a label, make it look really great. The printer side is where they'll do any sort of mirroring or adjusting that they might need to do. On this one, you'll have your blue Pantone color. You'll have your black in there. Now, because this is big, bold, dark black, like a bigger, you want that deep and rich. But then there's also really fine type in black. They may have done a sort of fine type black and a bold black, right? Some type of people call it like line black for like really fine details and lines. But there may actually be 2 separate black plates on this, depending on how it was printed, but just an FYI. And you'll also want to make sure that you are designing to a template. The printer or the bottle manufacturer or the shrink sleeve equipment manufacturer, one of them will have a shrink sleeve template built exactly for this bottle. You as the designer are not going to be able to determine the correct flat size that you're designing to for something like this. The contours, it's just a bottle shape. You should get a template to lay out your artwork to, and that will explain where the no print areas are and all that kind of stuff. Before you start designing shrink sleeve, get a template. The last thing I'll say about the files on this one is, because shrink sleeve is a clear material, if you need white, you gotta print it. So in this one, the UPC code on the back, there's a white block printed around that. Around the Prime logo, there's a white line, white area. So there is white. So you'll have your blue, your white, possibly two blacks, line black, and then a solid black, so they can carry some ink for that bigger logo. But shrink sleeves need white. Now that will make even more sense when we get into some of the cool glossy ones with cool foil effects and things. Next one, North Shore Hikes Pale Ale from Bridge Brewing Company. Awesome. I loved this design because it was really cool looking to me. Kind of this like retro vibe, almost like Oregon Trail. Right, if you remember as a kid, Oregon Trail on those little like Mac computers in school. Aging myself a bit. But anyways, I love the color of this. So what you've got going on in this print, there's nothing sort of showing through or foily or anything like that. You've got black, you've got blue, you've got red, and yes, you've got white. Now, because it's on a silver can and shrink sleeve is clear, stay with me. If you did not print white or any color in a certain area, you would see through to the can, the shiny silver can, yes. But because they've printed white overall, then color over all that, there's no show through or see through to the can. It's just straight full coverage ink and color. Love it. Again, get a template before you start designing something like this. You will need a template where there's no print areas, all the sorts of things like that, because you've got a seam on shrink sleeve. That's how it works. That's how it's made. And you want to make sure that you are keeping your ink away from, or like important copy, away from all these contours in the can, once it is shrunk down. So just a cool, nice print example of, of a great shrink sleeve. Now hold on. Just before I show you the next shrink sleeve, we get into some cool shiny ones. You can see I've rearranged my desk, so you know this is a different time. I'm pausing you just for a second to tell you about our guide to craft beer label designs. This guide will be an incredibly valuable tool for you on your print design and label design journey. The link to access that is down in the description. And did I say it was free? If I didn't, I'm telling you again. It's free, and the link to download that is down in the description of this video. Don't miss it. The guide to craft beer label designs. Now to the next shrink sleeve. Next up is, I'm gonna butcher this, Deara Sweet Sour from Driftwood Brewery. Now Driftwood Brewery is putting out incredible labels and shrink sleeve designs, and I believe they're all created by hired guns out of Nanaimo, British Columbia, and they do beautiful work. So a few things to note about this one. Let me just talk about what's going on here, and then we'll dive a little bit into it. We've got obviously an incredible illustration going on. We've got beautiful colors with this yellow and kind of green effects going on. It's got kind of sort of like a satin silver kind of look with the product name and the brewery logo on the front there. It's a matte finish shrink sleeve. It feels matte and smoother in the hand. But I can also see that there's a definite line at the top of this shrink sleeve where the matte finish ends and the top bit is gloss. So I'll explain that in just a sec here. Yeah, just a beautiful illustrated label. There's also white behind the UPC code here. So just describing that, knowing what you know from earlier in this video, we know that we've got a white ink going on. We've got either Pantones or CMYK. I'm gonna guess some CMYK. Yep, definitely CMYK, checking out the dots. Then you've got a matte coating on the outside of at least part of the sleeve, and I'll explain that in a sec. But then this silver metallic. What could that silver metallic be? If you guessed the can showing through the clear shrink sleeve, you'd be right, 100%. So what's going on here is you've got a clear shrink sleeve. Then you have a spot white ink that goes down first. And anywhere that you want to stay shiny and metallic looking, you do not print white. So you reverse out that white in those particular areas. Then you got the rest of your ink on top. Remember, that is on the inside of the shrink sleeve, right? Then on the outside of the shrink sleeve, we've got a spot matte coating. So before I get into the coating, what they've done here is they've reversed the white out so you can see through to the can. So you're getting the silver of the can coming through, which almost represents and looks like a silver foil. A really cool effect that you can use shrink sleeves for, depending on what sort of substrate or material the shrink sleeve is going onto. So you've got that showing through, but because you have a matte coating down on the outside of the can, that silver foil isn't this super high glossy silver foil look. It's sort of this satin classy foil look. It's really, really cool. So now the matte coating stops right at the shoulder line of this can. Now, why do they do that? They do it for mouth, right? Because the ink of the shrink sleeve is on the inside, that's protected from any sort of mouth contact while you're drinking the product. But because the varnish, the matte varnish needs to go on the outside of the can, you got to keep that down at the shoulder line or below. That way it just kind of keeps that coating, that ink, which is on the outside surface of the can, away from your mouth or any tasting or anything like that. So that is why that's done. Beautiful shrink sleeve design, incredible illustration. Love the foil look coming through. Well done, Driftwood Brewery. Moving on here, we've got Wild Eye Brewing Czech Pilsner. Now, I've looked over a couple of Wild Eye Brewing cans, and I love their designs. I love the illustration. I love the way that they let the foil effects come through the can. I love their look. So let's have a close look at this one. We obviously have lots of white going on here in the ink. That's cool. There's gold. Interesting. How is that achieved? It's on a silver can, but we've got gold. It's not a metallic ink, I'll tell you that. We also got black in here, obviously, for the UPC code and some of the type. Now let's talk about this. Obviously there's white ink, obviously there's black ink, but how is this gold achieved? Well, similar to what we showed before, where the can was showing through and there was no ink on top other than the varnish, and you had that silver coming through because the can is metallic silver. If you reverse that out of the white, same process, but then you print yellow on top of those areas, that yellow turns gold. Now, depending on the color of your yellow, you can adjust the shade of the gold, that sort of thing. But if you let can come through by reversing out the white, and then you print yellow on those reversed out areas, the metallic of the can creates a gold look with that ink on the outside of the can. Now, if I took the shrink sleeve off the can, it would not look that. It would look like a pale yellow and just look really bad, frankly. But once you put the silver backing of the can behind it, happy days, bada bing. Looks great. I love this design. I love the gold, the white and the gold contrast. Love it. Let's talk about the files on this one for a sec. Files, obviously you're going to start with a template. Did I say that? Get a template? Yeah, I think I did. It's important. Get a template. You've got your white, you've got your black, you've got your yellow, which is essentially your foil layer going on. And then on the outside of this one, there is a overall matte coating as well. Stops at the shoulder again. Can't see it as obviously as the last one because of the white, but it's easier to see on the darker colors. But same kind of thing going on. Feels nice. Feels nice. Well done. Okay, getting into a little bit more fun here. I got another one from Driftwood Brewery. I'm telling you, these guys and Hired Guns, their design agency, are just killing it. This is Driftwood Brewery's 20-pounder double IPA strong beer. That alone sounds terrifying. But what do we got going on here? We've got full color. We've got an awesome effect. We've got this really cool skeleton on the front. We've got gold coming through on the skeleton. We've also got silver metallic coming through on the skeleton. Interesting. We've also got a matte coating on the outside, and I can see that it stops at the shoulder line again. Just love these illustrations. We've obviously got white for some of the copy and for the UPC code backing or background on the back here. So another beautiful one from Driftwood Brewery. So I'm sure you're kind of catching on to this effect a little bit here because shrink sleeve is clear and you're printing on the inside of it. If you don't print white in certain areas and you're putting the shrink sleeve on a metallic silver can, that silver metallic will create a metallic effect with any of the inks that are printed there that are not covered by white, okay? So in this one, we've got a white layer reversed out with all of the illustrated effects that are in gold on like the vest, the product, the name of the product, all of that on the front. But then there's also reversed out of white is this big circle in the center of the skeleton. Then when you're putting the ink down, you've got a yellow over top of the reversed out white areas in the sort of vest and details, which is creating your gold look. And then you've got this big circle in the center of the skeleton where they didn't print any ink and you're just getting the silver of the can coming through. Now, because there's a matte varnish on the overall outside of this can and the shrink sleeve, those foils aren't super shiny foils. They are more satin finish foils. I say foils, but the foil look. And when you use that foil effect in really fine detail on labels, especially with things like this that are like illustrated, it looks phenomenal. Like it looks so good. Not only is that getting a whole bunch of extra shelf attention, but it just looks phenomenal. And that's gonna sell beer. That's gonna look great on Instagram. It's gonna look great in your portfolio, all of that kind of stuff. Great job again, Driftwood and Hired Guns. Now moving on to the final one. It's kind of ramping it up a notch here. Now, a funny story about this. I saw this shrink sleeve about 3 weeks ago for the first time in our local corner store here. And I was like, that's really cool. I'm gonna buy that for the next YouTube video that I do about shrink sleeves. And then just a couple days ago, I went to go buy it again and it was sold out. Shoot, okay, when are you getting this back in? I'm sorry, we're not. It's not available in Canada. You can't bring it into Canada anymore because it's got too high of a caffeine level. Crap, now I'm like messaging the community group that I'm in here, asking, does anybody have one of these cans hanging around? I just need it for a video. Nobody had it. Spent half an hour phoning around, finally found a place that had like 3 or 4 cans left. I went and I bought them all just for this, just for you. So let's have a look at this one. There's a lot going on in this one, so I'm gonna do my best to talk through this here. So let's talk about just inks for now, right? What am I seeing with the ink here? Well, I've got some spot colors for sure. I had a look at them under my loop, and they are Pantone colors, spot colors, both with the blue at the top, with the orange all the way around it. And there's a couple of different oranges in there. I've got white, obviously, because of the details on the back. I've got black because there's black on it. And but the other thing that really jumps out is on the Ghost name on the front of it. It is raised, like there's mega high gloss texture going on there. Then looking around the can as well, it's kind of got this really rough, smooth contrast finish to it. And the glossy, smooth areas, there's like illustrations and text and copy. But then the areas that are just the background that aren't that, illustration and copy, it's got this rough finish, this rough texture to it. So what the heck is going on here? Let me tell you. What you're looking at is spot colors. We already talked about those. White. You've got that's on the inside of the shrink sleeve, right? So that's printed on the inside. You've got your colors, you've got your white and all that kind of jazz. Now on the outside of the shrink sleeve, we have a rotary gloss UV screen print to get this raised effect on Ghost here. So that's raised up with that rotary screen print. Then what you have is just a standard UV gloss with a matte reticulated varnish. Reticulated? What the frick is that? Well, reticulated, the best way I can explain it is reticulated matte varnish is a varnish specifically created to have a reaction with a UV varnish, a high gloss UV varnish. When you print a flood of the UV gloss varnish, and then you print a spot of the matte reticulated varnish. There's a chemical reaction there that causes a bunch of like, I guess like bubbles, I guess in a way, like ripples and bubbles, like really tiny ripples and bubbles, creating a texture. Then it's likely UV printed, a UV bulb hits it and dries it and cures it instantly, which means all of those ridges, those bumps, those uneven textures are just like instantly frozen in time as they are, and that's what creates this really cool, really unique contrasting texture. Anywhere where that matte varnish did not print just remains that gloss UV. So you create this matte gloss contrast in one pass on the press. Happy days. So there's a lot going on this label. This is like taking shrink sleeve to the max. You've got your white, you've got a couple of Pantone colors in there, you've got your black, you've got your rotary screen print, you've got your matte reticulated varnish with your spot gloss UV to create this texture. And this jumped off the shelf to me immediately, which is why we design great, impactful beer labels and shrink sleeves, or beverage label and shrink sleeve. This is what gets shelf attention, causes somebody to pick it up, hold it in their hand and go, holy cow, what's going on here? And want to buy it, even just to come show their friends, like, I don't know what this is, I don't understand this, but this feels cool, right? So just a great job, and some really specialty techniques that you can use for creating shrink sleeve. That raised rotary screen print finish, the sort of reticulated coatings, things like that. Just a great job on the design. Win, win, win. So we've talked about shrink sleeves here. We've looked at a few examples of them. Shrink sleeves, yes, that is one way you can label a can. We also have a video where we go over labels, like the traditional label, and we look at some awesome ones and tell you how they were made. If you haven't watched that already, you can check that out right here, right here.